If you were a certain kind of kid on the internet, you made a guy. You know the guy. Tragic backstory, an unusual eye color, probably psychic powers, a name you found just like devastatingly cool. Maybe you drew them or you wrote 3,000 words about their sad but also kind of badass history and just like 0 words about anything else. And they were, in a way, you would have died before admitting you. A lot of us kept that guy in a notebook. Many of mine lived and died on Star Wars RP forums. This was Darth Diabolica, Dark Lady of the Sith, also known as Lena Zulara. Her twin sister was named Melina, and they were Padawans together until Melina died horribly, which turned Lena to the dark side, and I did not learn until much later talking to my actual sister that the word Melina means poop. So, you know, that's one of my guys. I have a friend, and her identity I am sworn to silence about, but you must know that she had a phantom OC with like cool, purely black eyes. But there was at least one corner of fanfiction.net where you could do something much better with them. You could mail them off to a stranger to be entered into a Hunger Games and killed. Because I submitted to so many of these, I filled out a lot of forms, and on every form, there was a question that's been rattling around in my mind since I was 12 years old. How would you like to die? So as a teen, I was really into the Hunger Games, as we all were. And you should all already know this because I've spent years rage baiting my followers by saying I'm Team Gale. I actually do mean it. I'm about to release a Patreon video where I explain myself, don't at me. Before the movie came out, my best friend and I made this fan-made version that was filmed in the park by my house. I didn't have a bow, so I just held 2 sticks together in a way that sort of looked like a bow if your eyes were closed. Now, real quick, for the like 3 of you who spent your 2012 outside touching grass, the world of the Hunger Games is made up of 12 districts run by an evil government who send 2 kids from each district into an arena every year to fight to the death on live TV. The reaping is the lottery that picks the kids, unless you wrote that they volunteered, in which case we need to talk about you. The careers were the kids from districts 1, 2, and 4 who illegally trained their whole lives and volunteered on purpose for glory. And the bloodbath is when everyone sprints for all the supplies at the start of the games and half of them die in the first 60 seconds. This is the thing you begged the author not to put your guy in. The series was about a lot of things, one of which was death games are bad. This might be a really bold and brave take, but I think making teenagers fight each other to the death might be bad. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. But like all stories about death games, the point is slightly undercut by the more important fact that death games are extremely cool. And if you were a teenager in 2011, you could do a death game of your own with submit your own tribute stories. These were just for fun, but in a lot of ways, they also ended up being a perfect storm for what happens when a community's core activity is against the rules of the only place that can host it. Because these stories were, as far as fanfiction.net was concerned, super illegal. By the time these things fell out of fashion, we were talking about people having to smuggle secret codes into their stories to avoid getting banned, having to split it up across several different platforms, and sometimes just losing everything forever.
I was there, Gandalf. I was there 3,000 years ago.
I'm not here to make fun of this stuff. I think it is awesome. I think a bunch of teenagers fighting against the website that let them post stuff is pretty beautiful. I'm laughing at myself here a bit, but right out the gate, I just want to say, this stuff was a fucking blast. If you've ever made one of these, I love you. We're in the trenches together. So, how did this start? Submit your own tribute stories didn't actually originate in the Hunger Games fandom, at least not purely. The concept actually arose from fanfiction of the Canadian animated fake reality TV show Total Drama Island. And yes, that means in some way, all SYOT fanfictions are CanCon.
A message from the Government of Canada.
For Total Drama Island, people would commonly submit their own characters to compete on a written version of the show until only one winner remained. There was a story called Total Drama World that started this trend. Then in 2009, a writer named Ginny of Flyer 450, who, if my math is correct, would have been 13 at the time, borrowed the idea for a story called DIY Hunger Games. The books were mid-release at this point. Catching Fire wouldn't come out for another couple months, and the movie was still years away. Then Catching Fire came out and introduced the Quarter Quell, which is explicitly the Hunger Games but with a special gimmick, and the rest was history. As the trilogy wound to an end and the movies neared their release date, you'd start to see hundreds to thousands of these things all over fanfiction.net. All of them had the same basic premise, send me your OCs and I will slaughter them for you. You could argue that these stories were missing the point of their source material, and some people did argue this at the time, but I don't think that's completely fair. Okay, yes, both of these shows were in theory critiques of their genres. Total Drama Island's Chris McLean is a send-up of the sadistic host personality, and the contestants are parodic versions of actual reality TV archetypes. The Hunger Games, too, was written in part as a critique of reality television. Suzanne Collins was inspired by surfing through reality TV and Iraq war footage at the same time, and how tonally disturbing that was. Both series were, in theory, kind of problematizing their own formats. But also, to parody any genre competently, you have to build a working instance of the genre. When The Lonely Island used to parody various pop bangers, they had to write their own good pop banger first. I remember when that new version of A Star Is Born came out, and the movie tried so hard to convince you that Lady Gaga's character was a sellout who wrote a terrible pop song, and just no, it actually does whip.
Why do you look so good in those jeans?
Or Beast Games. Were they missing the point by just uncritically recreating Squid Game when Squid Game is about how that stuff is bad? I mean, yeah, but the Squid Games also had to be fun to watch or no one would have watched the show. And when you create an enjoyable enough experience to watch or read about, the moral framing of the thing is the easiest thing in the world to discard. Like Suzanne Collins did intentionally make a banger death game with a cool mechanic that was fun to read about. And it's the kind of thing that breeds more iteration because the story tells you every Hunger Games has a unique arena and fun gimmicks. Of course, people are going to want to put their own spin on it. And so the possibilities of a custom Hunger Games are endless. I mean, the locales alone, people had so many unique ideas for the kinds of arenas they could put people in. People would do abandoned cities or underwater zones or a derelict aquarium or a giant board game where you have to figure out the rules. The series was absolutely inviting this, especially with the game design in the second book. But of course, these things needed formal structure, especially given the effort gap involved in making a story like this. Saying, hey, please write about my OC is the easiest thing in the world. Who wouldn't want that? Actually balancing a long, detailed story where you have to focus on 24 different unique characters, all of whom have their own creators who are seriously attached to their well-being and to making sure you're portraying them accurately is very much harder. So the very first thing these writers had to formalize was the submission form. A submission form for an SYOT was typically a long and somewhat complicated document that demanded a fair bit from the submitters. The early ones tended to look something like, what's your character's name? What district did they come from? What's their backstory? How do you see them doing in the games? By the end, authors were asking people to submit 6 different outfits for each occasion, full biographies of every family member they had, alliance and romance preferences, their exact training scores, and what celebrity the characters looked most like, among other things. Here is one such form for an actual story I submitted a character to back in the day. Don't make them all 18, outgoing, beautiful, and a great fighter. I'll get bored and won't put as many in. You can either make them handsome, tough, pretty, ugly, just mix it up a bit, all right? Name, district, age, appearance, personality, friends, family, token. By token, this means their signature item. Background, weapon of choice, other weapons, strengths, no more than 4, weaknesses, no less than 3. You had to declare a minimum of 3 flaws to enter the murder lottery. Volunteered or reaped, reaction if reaped. Why did they volunteer? Fears? Interview outfit. All outfits must be modest or your tribute won't be in. Reaping outfit. Chariot outfit. Interview angle. Interview quote. Training score. Romance? Ally? Skills? This is different than strengths. Strategy for bloodbath. Strategy for the rest of the games. Why do they want to win? Idea for their death. Can't have 24 victors. I really appreciate the little explanation here. The host is very gently explaining to a child why their character has to die. Will they kill? Anything else? The bottom 5 fields were asking submitters to design the murder environment itself. Arena form, terrain, weather, game maker's traps. Here, you, the child, are now invited to invent the death traps. Cornucopia location. This is a very typical example of the sorts of things you'd be asked back in the day. As these things went on, it would also become more common to see increasingly harsher rules instituted against certain submissions. This particular story gave you a points boost if you made a male character instead of a female character, I guess because everyone just wanted to submit girls. You'd also start to see no Mary Sues show up on all of these submission forms. For example, they would start to ban like orphan backstories, characters killing a career in their sleep, volunteers who weren't careers, and Katniss clones. Authors had to literally beg readers, please do not submit flawless, incredibly beautiful orphans from an impoverished district who also happen to be expert assassins. Which, on one hand, I get, because otherwise you get no tension. You know, the authors needed arrogant career tributes from the wealthy districts, sure, but they also needed terrified, unprepared kids from the outer districts to make the bloodbath realistic. But also, nobody wanted their character to be a broke, terrified child who died with zero fanfare in chapter 1. If you're spending hours on your original character, you are highly, highly invested. It's not like everyone wanted their character to win the games. A lot of people actually did submit their characters, hoping and expecting their characters to perish horribly. But nobody wanted their character to suck shit. And the format necessitated at least some characters sucking shit. So of course, readers would do everything they could for their little guys. The first was getting them into a favorable district. So back in my day, you'd leave a review in order to secure your slot. This would eventually become a problem, more on that later. But the most favorable slots were, of course, the career districts 1, 2, and 4. If your character was a career, they were almost certainly not going to die early, and they were also much more likely to win. So those slots would tend to fill up the fastest, followed by District 3 because it was the smart district, and District 7 probably because lumber district, so you could realistically be good with an axe and be an underdog who still had a real shot at winning. Not to mention, careers were usually villains, which is fine for some people, but 3 and 7 allowed you to make a competent character without making an asshole. You'd want to have other readers rooting for your character because in many cases, that too increased your chances of winning. Sometimes the district slots were just first come first serve, and other times you'd have multiple applicants and the author would pick their favorites. The second was points and sponsors. So in the actual book, rich people could pay to airdrop tributes, medicine, or weapons mid-games. Now, every story worked a little bit differently, but it wasn't uncommon for authors to dole out points to readers, which could then be spent to help your character or someone else's out of a bind. So here's one example system from the same fic as before. Submit a tribute, 25 points. Submit an arena form, terrain, weather, and traps, yes, all of them. Idea, 35 points. Submit one of the above arena details, 12 points. Leave a well-constructed review, 5 points. Review with between 1 word and 1 or 2 sentences, 3 points. And then later, prices for day 1 of the 20th Hunger Games are as follows. Make sure you specify which tribute is getting each gift. 1 roll, specify district, 2 points. Loaf of bread, specify district, 5 points. 1 quart of water, 8 points. Medicine must specify. PM a review to say which type and I'll give you the price so you can buy it. Small weapon, such as dagger, 25 points. Burn ointment, very small, small, medium, large, very large in that order, 5, 10, 20, 30, 50. Blade sharpener, 45 points. Sword, 100 points. Spear, 90 points. Bow, 90 points. 1 unbreakable arrow, 25 points. Other large weapons must specify PM or review to say what type, and I'll give you the price so you can buy it. Anything else, PM or review, and I'll give you the price so you can buy it. Rate of increase. Each price increases by 10% each day. Pretty simple system. Authors wanted more reviews and more visibility for their stories. Readers wanted a character who was alive. Plus, if your own OC died, you could spend your points helping someone else's. Hence, why you'd want a likable character. Other people could save your guy if you ran out of points. Capitalism at work. Now, the structures of the stories themselves were pretty much identical across the board because the Hunger Games gives you a prefabricated story template. First, the author posts a prologue establishing which edition of the Hunger Games this is and any lore rules, and then a submission form like the one above. Once slots fill up, you'd get the pre-arena stuff. Usually each tribute gets their own little section at the reaping and they get to say their goodbyes to their family members. Then you get the train ride, the tribute parade, training, and interviews, basically the same beats as the novel. In my memory, and from what I found going back and reading a bunch of these, you'd almost never get the full spectrum of moments for every single character. I mean, that was untenable. You're not going to write 24 separate train rides, 24 separate interviews, 24 separate training day moments, 12 separate group dinners. Like, it's just not happening. So this was usually where the first hints of favoritism would creep in. It started to become obvious which characters the authors found more compelling than others, and they'd get more focus in the narrative. For the authors, this would be some of the more difficult stuff to write because it's the most dense and bloated the story would ever be, and you were trying to please literally everyone at once. But for readers, this was also often some of the most exciting stuff in the story because you were literally just playing dolls with your little guys. You'd get to see your own characters, nothing bad was happening to them yet, so you knew they would get some focus, plus the fanfare and drama of this part of the story was just always going to be fun. Then you would get the arena, the actual death game itself. You'd have an early bloodbath where a whole bunch of tributes were killed off in quick succession, and from there a more standardly paced story where tributes would die off, usually 1 or 2 per chapter, until a single victor remained. This is where you might try to save your character with sponsorships and also where the bulk of drama happened, if there was any. Hearts were broken aplenty, mine included. Also, this is where a lot of these stories ended up being abandoned, which is sad. If they weren't, you'd get a final dramatic battle and maybe a victor interview and a glimpse of their post-games life. If you were among the lucky ones, you might even see some winner-only all-stars SYOTs where you could submit your victor for a second chance at death. I read hundreds of these as a kid, and in preparation to talk about it again, I went back and read as many character submissions and stories as I could. Now, after a while, that started to become difficult because during my time, the way you would typically submit a character was to leave a review. You'd put all that information right there where everyone could see it, and that was fine. But eventually, authors started demanding that you direct message them to submit your characters instead. This was for a few reasons. 1, the author could communicate with people directly, maybe give them a heads up that their beloved character was about to die. 2, no spoilers for anyone else. And 3, as a protective measure against people like me. And by that I mean, okay, so basically every SYOT in 2011 had a 12-year-old, vaguely District 7, secretly resourceful girl who wanted to die meaningfully in the back half. It was me. It was always me. I wanted my OCs in these stories so badly. And fanfiction.net let you comment under most works logged out and using a pseudonym instead of your real account. So I'd be like 8 different people so I could submit 8 different characters to the same Hunger Games. For this specific fic, the one I was reading excerpts from earlier, I was myself submitting my typical character I'll tell you all about. And, you know, since 2 submissions per person were allowed, I also submitted Klem Robson. I was Jason Porler submitting Jason McNell, and Leek, my fake alter ego, submitted a self-insert because I figured maybe I wouldn't get caught that way. I was PrimFan21 submitting Callie Danley, who was an insert of my best friend so that we could compete in the games together, cute, and Range Adam. I was also Sazan submitting Gegar Donach. See, you'd get extra points if you submitted a character called Gegar, I guess because the author liked the name Gegar. I was a 12-year-old menace. I did this with so many fics at the time. This was partly just because I wanted a bunch of my own characters in the story, and partly so I could game the points system. Each character got 25 points base and more points for leaving a review, and if you're willing to be 8 people, you can leave 8 times the reviews and get 8 times the points. So my plan was for all of my sock puppets to spend all of the points on me. I was running multiple shell corporations for the child death arena. It was great because each sock puppet was both a character slot and a review farming bot, and they all tied their points to one queen. And who was she, you might ask? The real character who I was raking up all the points to save. I am happy to tell you because I made multiple submissions to multiple SYOTs and they all read exactly like this. I'm so happy that there's still a record. Meet Sarah Zaria. Name, Sarah. District, 9. Age, 12. Appearance, brown hair, a bit longer than shoulder length. 5'3", hazel eyes.
I'm sorry, I just let me get it out of my system.
No, that's good, that's good.
Oh
We should leave that
I
in.
made a video called The Narcissist Scare.
Fuck off! I know!
This is the narcissist scare.
You're right, it is. You're right. Get my ass. Name, Sarah. District 9, age 12, appearance, brown hair, a bit longer than shoulder length, 5'3", hazel eyes, personality, very intelligent, talks too much. I know.
Sorry, I shouldn't have.
No, it's fine. It's true. Family, orphan who lives with 18-year-old sister Lynn. Token, a bracelet from her mother that she never takes off. Weapon of choice, trap. Volunteered or reaped? Reaped. Reaction if reaped. Lynn says, I can go if you don't want to. Sarah, no. If I die though, promise me something. Lynn, what? Sarah, don't sell any of my stuff. She tried to be humorous, but inside she was dying already. Interview outfit. District 9 is food processing, so Sarah will be in a ninja-like outfit with food for weapons. It's stupid, but it's all I have. Interview quote. This is so much for me, but I know I'll win for one reason. I'm very resourceful. Give me a gown, a book, anything. I can find a way to turn it into a weapon or trap. I can use it to sneak into your food supply, and I'll write a song about it, because this is what I do. And then the death request. Keep in mind, I am 12. Idea for their death. If she must die, make it toward the end. Not like final 3, maybe like final 7 or 6. Make it really emotional. The ally sees her after she gets attacked. Maybe for stealing another tribute's food. She's there, dying, and all she can do is give her ally the bracelet and say, when you win, give this to Lynn. Tell her I'll miss her very much. Tell her I'm sorry I couldn't get further. Tell her not to cry. And finally, tell her I love her and that I would want nothing more than to see her one last time. Cannon goes off. Anything else? Please do my suggestion for her death, Abd. Don't make her die in the bloodbath. So that's 1. Her name was Sarah, like me. She was 12, like I was. 18-year-old sister, like I had. Talks too much, like me. I was ready. I was so ready for this dramatic death scene. Okay, here's another submission to a different SYOT. Name, Sarah Beth DeReeve. District 7, age 12. Appearance, long brownish blonde hair, tall and developed for her age, light green eyes. Personality, generally outgoing and bubbly, pretty intelligent, but with a fatal flaw in her temper. Family, 16-year-old brother Jacob, whom she looks up to and misses very much. Her mother died while giving birth to her, and her father is not nearly as important to her as Jacob, though Sarah Beth loves him too. Interview quote. You can give me a piece of paper, a stuffed animal, whatever. I can make a weapon out of it and kill you with it. Strengths. Resourceful.
You plagiarized yourself!
I plagiarized myself! Strengths. Resourcefulness, speed, stealth. Weakness, temper, brute force. Death ideas. If she has to die, it should be toward the end, but not too toward. Probably die by being betrayed. It was the same kid every time. And that kid was just me. Even the same signature line about I can turn whatever you give me into a deadly weapon. I was running a one-girl franchise across multiple authors' arenas. I had to die, and it had to be dramatic and toward the end, but not too toward the end. And I wanted Sarah dead. And believe me, I was ready to make a billion sock puppets to make sure she died at exactly the appropriate time. Point being, most authors eventually started requiring submissions to happen via private message. I am the reason we can't have nice things. This made it hard to go back and read because for so many of these, the form submissions are now just a complete secret. But I still went back and read as many of these as I could, and almost all of them collapse into 5 guys, burgers and fries. I'm gonna use as many of my own characters as the examples, partly so I'm not dunking on a stranger's 12-year-old, and partly because I made every single one of these types of guys myself. If you ever wrote an SYOT or submitted a character to one, please feel free to play along at home and let me know if your character fits into one of these. But hold that thought, because the reviews are in. Hi, I was at your Vancouver show on Monday and I had a blast. I'd 100% go again and bring more friends if you do more live shows here in the future. The live show in Vancouver was so amazing. You have a way of being able to tie niche internet-based / adjacent ramblings and past and present cultural phenomenon together while being grounded in actual care for humanity the whole time. The comedy is hilarious but doesn't detract from the message. Went to your Vancouver show and it was genuinely a super amazing time. Those are real posts from people who came to my first ever live show last summer. And I have very good news for the rest of you because there's exactly one more chance to catch this thing. I'm bringing This Might Be a Tangent to Seattle, August 21st. Same show that just tore through Toronto and Vancouver. The first half is me going all the way down a rabbit hole that's been eating my brain alive. Exact topic is a secret, but something involving literary economics, cultural gatekeeping, and a publishing industry secret that's hiding in plain sight. The second half is interactive, and no two shows are the same. Tickets are on sale right now. Come explore some unhinged cultural rabbit holes with me. Come say hi. I would love to see you there. Link is in the description. And now presenting the 5 types of guys in the Hunger Games. Type 1, the weepy. The weepy is never going to win the Hunger Games because their primary point is to have the most tragic death imaginable and be cried over. The weepy is for people who loved Rue's death scene, but also imagined, what if someone was that sad about them dying? Wouldn't that be kind of awesome? It's one of the most common types of character because this is actually an incredibly safe fantasy. To be loved enough that your death wrecks someone. Ideally, it wrecks every single reader. A prime example of the weepy is our very own Sarah Zaria, but if you've read enough of these, you'll find that there are weepies everywhere for those with eyes to see. In a submission for the same fic, another kid, District 6 tribute Kaya Mason. She volunteers to save the life of her terminally ill twin sister Layla. For death ideas, the reviewer put, let her be killed by a tribute and have her say something like, I'm sorry, Layla, for drama. I'm just gonna say, this is way better than mine. Both of them die apologizing to their surviving sibling, but my older sister is just some guy. Terminally ill twin you're sacrificing your life for is way cooler. Sarah Zaria got mogged in her very own story. Or Joyce Harlem, District 12. Idea for their death, killed by a spear in the back or an arrow. If so, I want someone to be there with her, perhaps dying by her side, holding her hand. If someone she is bonded with dies, I want her to be there for him/her when he/she dies and protect them through their last minute. I love that the spear is such an afterthought compared to the drawn out death description. Type 2, the badass. The badass wants to go out swinging, and if they don't, they want to win. The badass being mourned doesn't really matter, but they absolutely want to be respected. They might be overpowered when they die, but they never look pathetic. They're gonna be taken down mid-charge, fighting to the last. I didn't make a lot of badasses myself, but they tended to make up a pretty significant proportion of what I read. For example, Lark Bird. She is one of the famous bird family. They've lived there for generations and are known for being uncivilized and a threat to the district. None of them have a job, they make money by threatening or stealing from other people, they're all loud, dirty, and dangerous criminals. Lark grew up experienced with all kinds of weapons and as a hardened fighter, learning to live by threatening others and being continuously challenged by her brothers. Strengths. She's definitely a natural fighter, she's fiery, good with weapons, strong and tough despite being so young, and the sort of person who won't go down without a fight. Hell yeah, Larkbird, mad respect. Or we've got Jaggery Lanther, District 2, the career who's too cool for the careers. Also, Jaggery Lanther is a genuinely awesome name. It rolls off the tongue great. Real cellar door kind of name. His parents are secret rebels, and even though he's a career, his strategy will be leave the careers in the bloodbath to go on his own. He knows they will betray him. Everyone made a badass OC at some point. I didn't in the Hunger Games as a pretty one-note kid. I guess the fantasy of being cool was so unreachable to me that I just wanted to be cried over. But I do think that Darth Diabolica absolutely fits this to a T. It's an understandable power fantasy for any original character, but in this sort of setting, I'd also say it's a way of reclaiming some kind of control. Deaths in these stories are mostly mandatory and random, so when a character goes down swinging, it's kind of a way of saying, sure, I was taken down, but it took several of you. Death by children's murder lottery turns into a feat of strength. Type 3, the martyr. These are people who want their characters' deaths to mean something. They don't have to be sad or badass, but they do have to be like a political statement of some sort. This archetype tended to get the most pushbacks, just for fear of everyone like just making Katniss clones. And a lot of these characters do read as like proto-chosen ones. Exhibit A, a tribute named Blighter Galston. pale blonde from District 11, and we're just gonna keep moving. Her death idea is being stabbed and then writing a message with her blood that says, "The capital doesn't own anyone." And then in the same breath, the kid submitting blighter adds, "Cliche, I know," and then, "But you don't have to kill her, lol." This is so relatable to me. Someone pitching a blood message martyrdom, preemptively apologizing for it being cliche, and then immediately getting cold feet about whether their girl has to die at all. Been there. My favorite one I found is a District 7 tribute named Flander Winterton, and we need to respect the level of commitment here. So, Flander pretends to be weak and innocent to get sympathy, then joins the careers, then starts brutally murdering people, and mid-killing spree, opens the locker her executed parents gave her, reads the poem engraved inside, realizes she's become a part of the capital she hates, and kills herself. And the kid included the poem. "Always remember who you are. Your identity can never fall too far. Remember what your life is for. Love and peace, and nothing more." And then in the other info box, they explained the entire thesis. The point of Flander is to show people that society can really change you. We become what they want and not what we believe in, and we should always have courage to be ourselves. I would have eaten this shit up if it was actually in the book. Let me tell you that. People who made martyr characters tended to be, in my experience, the people who read these books and got angry. Being like 13 and angry at injustice with no outlet at the time except a fanfiction submission form is a real and powerful thing. And on one hand, yes, these characters tended to be thematically Katniss clones, so I get why SYOT authors didn't like them. Like, fine. Realistically, in an actual arena of scared children trying to survive, 0 of them are pausing mid-murder to deliver an anti-capital manifesto in their own blood. The Capitol designed these games for decades, and the whole horror is how effective the spectacle is at making everyone comply. Fine. But also, these people were engaging with the source material incredibly sincerely. The authors were right that you can't have a whole arena of them, but these kids were paying attention to me. You know, the martyr is wish fulfillment for, I think, a very specific kind of teen reader. Here is a world where the right words said at the moment of death actually land and actually matter. And thus, martyr characters, they can never make me hate you. Type 4, the revenge thriller. This guy is a little different than the other types. For the other 3, the character kind of gets something out of their own death, whether it is being mourned or being awesome or being right. This one is just purely for the reader. You build a guy specifically so they can suck as much as possible, just be the absolute worst, so that the audience will be delighted when they die. You're writing a little villain so everyone can cheer when he eats it. This is Range Adam, submitted by my sock puppet, PrimFan21. Here's how I, age 12, described his inner life. Almost emotionless. He knows 3 emotions: hate, anger, and one not many know of: love. One not many know of. His interview quote, which I want read at my funeral: "I'm not gonna pretend to be nice to anyone. I hate everyone here. I don't want to be your best friend. No, I'm here to kill you and do a damn good job of it." And then in the notes, in case the author somehow missed the assignment, I wrote, "Make him hate everyone." Babe, I think they got it. But the absolute platonic ideal of this type is a tribute from another fic named Drake Show. He's a heartless career. His interview quote is just, "No one can beat me." His token is, and I quote, he doesn't think he needs anything to help him win, and his death idea is that his entire career army should turn on him, and a sly character should sneak up and stab him in the back. And then at the very bottom of the form, they wrote to the author directly, "Do you hate this guy yet or what?" That's the whole type. Yes, we hated him. Mission accomplished. Stab away. Before we get to type 5, I want to throw out some wild cards, including some of mine. So, we have Jason McNeil, submitted by Jason Porler, who, reminder, is me. I made a fake person to submit a tribute, and the tribute I gave him was an angry little mohawk-wearing child, whose idea for his death I recorded in full as IDK. Will he kill anyone? In the bloodbath. The second is Gegar Donach, submitted by also me, and who you may remember I made specifically to farm the Gegar name bonus. I gave Gegar a whole personality, and the personality was deliberately unremarkable. I wrote, My tribute isn't trying to be boring. I just don't think every single tribute in the games is outspoken and perfect. At the exact same time, I was both the kid writing elaborate operatic death scenes and the kid showing up to argue unprompted that actually it's more realistic if some tributes are kind of mid. I'm so sorry. My absolute favorite tribute, though, who I couldn't really slot into any category, is just this guy named Eagle Duncan. Who clearly just has something wrong with him. Here's how his thing goes. 18, District 10. He is crazy. He kills a lot of animals for fun when he is bored. He is also reckless. Okay, edgy teen OC, we've seen 100 of these, but he likes talking to people too and being around them. Okay, he's a nice guy, but he hates people named Clarity and will kill them. Out of nowhere, oddly specific, why Clarity? His mother is called Clarity and abused him all his life until when he was 16, he killed her, but he blamed his drunk father. He doesn't regret it. Preferred death. I want him to die after killing Clarity. I read the rest of the comments, and there's a tribute in the same fic named Clarity. So this kid built an entire tribute whose reason for existing is to hunt down and murder a stranger's OC as proxy for his dead mother. Final line. He will be dressed as dumb things. What does that mean? The fic was abandoned after chapter 3, which is so sad because Eagle Duncan never got to kill Clarity. I love you, Eagle Duncan. Maybe in another life you got your kill. Speaking of sickos, type 5. Okay, so we've done mourned, respected, righteous, and hateable, and Eagle Duncan. But they were all of them deceived, for one more type of guy was made. This is the horror tribute. And the point of the horror tribute is that they are just made lovingly from scratch to die the most horrible death you can possibly imagine. You construct someone specifically so you can break them. The pleasure here is just in the making of the suffering. And if that sounds unhinged, well, hi. Let me introduce you to Klem Robson. I described him as shy, unpopular. He has a kind personality and is an intelligent, wonderful person, but no one knows it. He's just a cinnamon roll. His only friend is his puppy Pat. And then the death request. Romance. He should be led on by a female career who is secretly tricking him. Ally. The career. Death. He should be tortured and killed by the career. So, to recap, I invented a lonely and kind-hearted boy whose only friend is a puppy, gave him a crush, and then specified that the crush should be a manipulation that should end in horrible torture. I built the nicest possible guy purely so that the betrayal would hurt more. There's no message here. There's no nobility. Klem just got to be hurt on purpose by someone he trusted because 12-year-old me was like, fuck yeah, that's the good stuff. And it is. It is the good stuff. I'm not gonna stand here and pretend I've grown. I would do it again today. Fuck you. And before you think I was uniquely cooked, I was not alone. This is a tribute named Suki from another fic submitted by some other kid. Her preferred death was, verbatim, falling off a cliff, surviving, and climbing back up to be pushed off again. And then because they wanted to be clear, they added, that would be my preferred death for her, not her preferred death. I've never felt closer to a stranger. I really appreciate the specification personally, just so there could be no confusion about who the sicko was. It was them. We were all in that comment section building beautiful little guys to feed into the wood chipper, and we were happy. I don't think you can create a single unified theory of why this stuff was so popular, and I don't want to, but I do think there's a specific reason this kind of content appeals primarily to teens. I'll note, some people are still writing these, especially with the Hunger Games Renaissance coming back in full force, and while it's not exclusively written by young people, that does seem to be the majority. The other segment, from what I've seen, seem to be veteran writers who are in it for the long haul and are using the format to tell some very impressive high-concept stories. Like, the scope of this video is more of a nostalgia trip, but I also want to throw out a genuine shout out to the people who are like in the trenches with these works these days. They are evolving the form, mad respect. As far as the teen readership goes, though, for a lot of people, adolescence is both when you're at your peak emotional intensity and when you feel the least lovable you've ever felt. I think for someone like that, a drawn-out, gruesome death is proof of significance. Nobody gets tortured to death in Chapter 1 as a side character. The elaborateness of your suffering measures how much the story, and more broadly the world, cares that you exist. Being horribly tortured by your deceptive lover also becomes a perverse form of being seen. The torturer's complete focus on you is its own kind of attention that appeals to someone who feels invisible. And of course, some of us were just sickos. And I think that's beautiful. Now, these fics were not all fun and games. As a community, there were obviously their fair share of problems. I don't want to focus excessively on anyone's drama, and besides, you can probably imagine the shape a lot of these problems took. It wasn't at all uncommon to see accusations of favoritism towards certain characters, or backlash at your beloved OC dying too early, or being written poorly, or being portrayed in the wrong way somehow. There was at least one prominent instance where an author was basically eviscerated for keeping an unlikable female character in the story for too long. Get behind me, Darcy. Obviously, in theory, the fundamental premise of the Hunger Games is that 23 out of 24 kids are guaranteed to die. You know, it's a death game. But also, most people were, as we saw, expecting a meaningful death, and you can't really do that with 24 characters. Not to mention, incorporation of the pay-to-win sponsorship system also kind of blurred those lines for a lot of people. Since you could earn points and spend them to help out your tribute, there was a much greater feeling of actual equity in the games. People felt like they'd literally paid for their character's survival through their engagement. And it's an extremely difficult position for an author to be in too. Imagine 24 children each handed you their most precious creature and said, "Kill this perfectly." I tried to write one of these and I lost my mind after like chapter 3. I can't imagine. So, you know, there was friction, whatever. The much larger threat to this community, though, was the complete and utter annihilation of the form. Because SYOT stories broke just about every rule on the platform. Fanfiction.net had some incredibly stringent and sometimes completely bizarre restrictions on the stories. Now, nowadays, basically no one is enforcing them. I'm pretty sure the domain name for the site is just being periodically renewed by a withered skeleton sitting at a desk chair. But these rules are technically still in place. In the year 2026, if you want to write a story on fanfiction.net, you are not allowed to write a story using the second person. You're not allowed to write a choose-your-own-adventure story, write a story using a chat or script format, include any chapters that are just like polls or author's notes, write porn or RPF, or write anything about Archie Comics characters. 2026! And back in the day, this was taken extremely seriously. An SYOT is by its very definition an interactive game using reader-submitted characters. Plus, they were violating the ban on non-story content. You had to be able to post the submission forms or keep track of points. And they also couldn't just move somewhere else either. Nowadays, it doesn't matter that fanfiction.net bans anything good because you just move to archive of our own, but AO3 wasn't super big in 2010 yet, especially not with teens, who were a lot of the writers and readers, and also didn't have a system for direct messaging people. And, as we know, writers moved away from allowing submissions in the reviews, partly because of people like me. I'm sorry. They were largely, but not exclusively, being flagged by a bunch of self-appointed mass reporters called Critics United. And I won't get super into them because I already talked about them in my Toby video years and years ago. So, you know, just pause this one and go watch that one and then come back. Okay, welcome back. Fanfiction.net's two great purges were September 12th, 2002. I know that date sounds like a joke, but then a second ban wave hit the website on June 4th, 2012. A lot of what got deleted was porn, like tens of thousands of stories of it, but that also included a whole bunch of SYOT stuff. This was the era I came up in, and it was not uncommon to see Critics United people show up in the comments of an SYOT to be like, "Take this down immediately or I will report you." So many fics went silent. And a lot of the time, your entire account would get taken down too, including all of your private messages with people and everything you'd ever written. You can imagine spending a year on a 200k word collaborative epic and waking up to find it deleted because one of your chapters was a list. It was a dark time. But, of course, authors couldn't leave because no other popular fanfiction website had the infrastructure to support these stories. Some people did just abandon their stories, others re-uploaded them later when it was a little bit safer. Others, though, got sneaky! The submission forms themselves just went underground and moved into private messages and onto external blogs, or in more recent times, Discord servers. But my favorite trick was that writers would sneak in the non-story content. You weren't allowed to post a chapter that was just a list of the tribute stats, but you were allowed to write the host of the Hunger Games reading the tribute scores off a teleprompter on live Capitol television. You couldn't post a tribute roster, but you could share the roster as an in-universe news broadcast. Now, in theory, you could say this isn't really a workaround, it's just like complying with the rules normal style, but I think they were being very sneaky. It's still interactive content, which is banned. The fic is still soliciting reader-submitted characters, just secretly. And there's something so meta about that. Like, so much YA is kind of a power fantasy about being a smart kid and being able to survive unfair systems through outwitting them, right? And then here, being a good writer is your disguise. If you just post a list of tributes, it reads as, this is an interactive game, report it. But then you have the same data and it's written as an in-universe scene and it's just like, oh, a story. So the better you wrote, the more illegal activity you could hide in plain sight. Being a good writer made you a better criminal. The YA fans accidentally started to inhabit a world where YA logic is true. That is sick as hell. The thing that really ended up getting most of these fics actually wasn't Critics United or the moderator purges at all, it was just time. You know, as the movies wound down and wrapped up in 2015, the tide just went out. You know, you had fewer people showing up to submit their characters, but much more importantly, fewer people willing to host. It's like Grindr, you know, no one wants to host. Like I said, it never died completely, basically no genre ever does, but the golden age where a single fic could pull like hundreds of tribute submissions did eventually end. Besides the movies themselves just ending, part of this comes down to accumulating fatigue over time. The vast majority of these several 100,000 word collaborative epics with 24 protagonists and 24 attached parents breathing down your neck never got finished. Some did, and are even considered legends now, but the majority died out before the games even got started. People just got busy, and a lot of people overcommitted to writing a ridiculously complicated story. You can go on fanfiction.net today and find thousands of these frozen mid-games, chapter 11 of a planned 30, tributes standing in the arena forever, mid-sentence, waiting for a death that is never, ever coming. It's just what happens with these kinds of stories, but it's also always too bad. Lots of kids were really excited to find out what would happen to their characters and never got to. Lots of writers bit off more than they could chew, or they just got bored and life got busy, or they didn't update for fear of a purge, and we lost the next great novelist forever. So let's talk about the real victim here, which is me. Because you know that one fic I infested, one of many, the Sarah Zaria one with Klet and my fleet of Shell Corporation sock puppets? It updated for the last time in 2011, chapter 11, and then the author walked away forever and Sarah Zaria never died. I worked so hard to set Sarah Zaria up for a perfect death. I was one step away from committing identity theft to farm all the points for her, and then this author posted chapter 11 and went out to buy cigarettes. Klet never got tortured to death by the girl he loved. Range never got to die hated. Gegger never got to be boring at anyone. For that matter, Sarah Beth Derev never died. Sarah Zemmel never died. Sarah Zormand never died. Sarah Grace never died. Somewhere out there, Sierra Zalby is sitting in a reaping square just waiting. I submitted dozens of these to dozens of writers, maybe more. There is a non-zero number of 12-year-old resourceful District 7 girls with dead parents and a beloved older sibling scattered across the abandoned fanfiction of the early 10s, and none of them are allowed to die the beautiful death I personally choreographed for them. I am owed at minimum 20 tragedies and I have collected exactly 0. Well, you know what they say. If you want something done right. For 2 nights, Clarity snuck into the Western camp and pilfered the Upper District stores for all she could carry. The first night was easy. They'd kept the gates creaky on purpose, but Clarity had heard the wails of the little boy out by the shooting gallery the night before. The careers had kept him alive long past necessary, and she knew tonight they'd be playing again. It was just a matter of waiting for the cannons to explode. 20 minutes wait. That gate could have been screaming with rust, and she still would have slipped through undetected. That night, the food store sat tucked inside the ticket booth, guarded by a District 11 girl armed with a nasty harpoon gun. That was all the better. Free food and free weapons. No trouble. The next night, they'd moved what remained of the stockpile to the top of the Ferris wheel, but they'd thought strangling the boy from District 3 for electrical wiring would be enough to get the thing moving, and it took Clarity nothing more than a bit of climbing to make off with 6 apples and a water filter. On the third night, though, the remaining stores sat suspiciously defenseless. No longer at the top of the wheel, the tantalizing supplies now lay smack dab in the middle of the carousel. Bedrolls and flour and bandages, real bandages, all circled by ceramic horses and gloriously unguarded. Clarity knew better. Sarah Zaria did not. The 12-year-old had made it this far without the weapons you were supposed to need. Anything could be a garrote, even a dress, and so no dagger was worth dying for. The same did not apply to food, and back under the floorboards of the haunted house, Flander Winderton was hungry. Flander had been perched atop the old lemonade stand, seconds from cutting Sarah's throat when the locket fell from Flander's neck and shattered open. The rest was history. Flander was now 4 days into being a good person and had needed somewhere for the good to go. It was a debt Sarah was about to repay in full with the remainder of the Western Camp's supplies. Sarah stepped into the carousel, and the great thing woke around her. The lights slammed on all at once. A calliope wheezed up out of the silence. Slow and groaning, the painted horses began to chug up and down. She had time to get one arm around the flour sack before the machete pierced her back. Clarity! The boy from District 10, Eagle Duncan, was screaming it triumphantly when Sarah fell to her knees. There was a distant, underwater sense that he was shouting more words at her. No time to listen. The blade jutted stock straight out of her stomach. It felt warm. Eagle turned her by the shoulder, looked at her face. Disappointment, irritation even, and then he was walking away, all nonchalant. The bag held firm in her grip. She'd have been proud of that later, if there'd been a later. She turned and stumbled back swaying across the spinning platform toward the haunted house. Flander came up out of the dark to catch her before she fell. Hey, look at me. Food. That was all she could manage. The sky was dark and blurry, and somewhere miles away, strong arms were carrying her into shelter. Don't talk, I've got you. The sound of a bag unzipping, crinkling canvas. It was too late for bandages. Her fingers were already working at her mother's bracelet. She twisted it down over her knuckles and pressed it into Flander's hand and folded the fingers shut over it. When you win, Sarah said. Give this to Lynn. No, shut up, you're going to be fine. Tell her I'll miss her very much. Tell her I'm sorry I couldn't get further. Tell her not to cry. There was music somewhere. And finally, tell her I love her, and that I'd want nothing more than to see her one last time. But she could. Lynn was there in the way Flander pressed a tender kiss to her forehead. 40 good nights ago, 2 sisters had built a pillow fort hours past their bedtime and made up stories about a better world. I was gonna write a song about this, she murmured. That's my thing. I write a song. A faint smile. You'll have to make one up for. The cannon fired. So that's that. Sarah Zaria finally got her death. The forum asked me, how would you like to die? And finally, for one of my hyper-competent younger sibling orphans, we got an answer. Many more are still waiting. I run a very large company and I have a lot of unfinished business. Operations resume Monday. If you ever made one of these, go finish it. Somebody's little guy is still waiting to perish. And there's a new movie coming out, so it's a great time to do it. Also, if you're the creator of Flander or Eagle Duncan, please don't sue me. Thank you. Every single one of these OCs, to some extent, kind of came from the same desire, which is, let me decide what this death means. And at least for me, that desire never really went away. I mean, I'm not writing Hunger Games self-insert fanfiction about it anymore, but now I get haunted by history instead. I made something about that. It's called 3 Dead Girls I Love, and it is no contest the most serious, most personal, and most obsessive thing I have ever put my name on. A year of my life on women separated by millennia. It's about who gets remembered at their worst and erased at their best, and what we owe the dead when the worst part is all that's left. And there's a 4th girl in it I'm not going to tell you a single thing about. You just have to watch it. I love this one more than anything I've made. And it lives in exactly one place. Nebula is a streaming service you might have heard described as Netflix for people who like trains, built and co-owned by a bunch of independent creators, me included. There's so much incredible work that's too strange to survive anywhere else, and because we actually own the place, subscribing pays us directly to keep making it. In my case, that's how I got to make a hours-long video about archival violence and release it without a single mid-roll cutting into the middle of it. There are no ads, and All of my videos are early on there. You can also watch a ton of other incredible exclusive content like Lindsay Ellis's take on Bluey adults or Tom Scott exploring all of England. 3 Dead Girls I Love is only there. Nebula is 50% off through my link, $30 for the whole year, about $2.50 a month at go.nebula.tv/SarahZ. You can also get a huge discount on a lifetime subscription if you want and just have Nebula forever. You can scan the code on screen or hit the link in the description. Come meet the 3 Dead Girls. Then go find out who the 4th one is. On top of a big thank you to all my patrons, I would like to specially thank my $20 plus patrons. 124mm10, Infelixious Rips, Jack Hydrick, and Zach Radley. Thank you so much.
FLYIN.